jumping to now topic number one of the conversation, and that being something a bit more interesting here. And, Alabama, Nick Saban trying to get more, I guess, NIL, name, image, likeness, or deals into the program. And you got the High Tide Traditions, a third-party source trying to, help the players get their name more so out there, leading them to these businesses to get the compensation for their name, image, and likeness. And, of course, Pat, when you and I both saw the story, we thought, this is interesting. This is intriguing. This is kind of different here because we know, Alabama's not the only school in the SEC working with, a lot of these NIL things. But Alabama trying to be that school where you want to get the national championships, you want to get the number one draft picks, but then you also want to be at the top of, or try to be at the top of the name, image, likeness thing, as well. And for a lot of people out there, Pat, they were kind of iffy about, should players get paid? Is this going to throw off the integrity of the game? Is college sports becoming pro sports? Me personally, I was all in for players getting compensated. But for you, Pat, do you still feel like it's the right thing, or do you think it's become the wild, wild west and we need to have a bit more of a control on it?
Well, it absolutely is the wild, wild west. And Alabama, with having this third-party conglomerate, even though it's not affiliated with the school, it's just another thing to point to in terms of recruiting and wanting to get these players into their program. And, as of right now, I'm still for the players getting paid. I'm absolutely still for the players getting played. I mean, there's just too many years of where all these guys are kind of be getting taken advantage of and used, whether however many jerseys were sold or autographs were signed and no compensation at all for them. So based off just making money off their name, image, and likeness, I'm still all for it. But, I still there has to be some sort of level of regulation to it because, like we mentioned, it is the wild, wild west. And, these big schools are just going to keep getting stronger with all the money that they have going into them. So I'm still for it, but maybe ask me again in a few years if I still think this is the right thing going on right now.
I think for me, Pat, it's putting this under a magnifying glass and wondering, do the pros outweigh the cons? Because, of course, there's pros and cons to everything. The pros, like we mentioned, these young men are getting paid. They are getting compensated for what they do on the field, and that's a big pro because they didn't have that, years back. But I still have to look at the cons and go, what does this do in terms of the integrity of the game? Because when you ask a lot of people out there, they go, well, I'm a college guy. I'm not an NFL guy. NFL is about the money. The college is the love and the pageantry and the enjoyment and the excitement of the sport. And you get the purists that feel like if you pay the players, it's going to rob something from us. So it's pros and cons to everything. But do you feel like in the case of Alabama and in the case of Nick Saban, can the pros outweigh the cons to you?
I think so, because if you're going to Alabama solely just for NIL, if you're a five-star player going to Alabama solely for NIL, I mean, all power to you. But you in its purest form, you want to go to Alabama for that long-term compensation, meaning that if you want to go to Alabama, try to be a first-round draft pick.
Right.
Because however much money you can make, name, image, and likeness, after 4 years, that's over. If you go to the NFL, that is years and years and years
generational wealth.
Yeah, exactly what we're talking about. That's years of compensation, and if you're good, you're going to keep earning contracts. It's long-term income, which is what can be created if you go to Alabama and you develop and you take the coaching and go forth like that. So I think it's almost just the kind of player's mindset that they have to understand that, the NIL, it's good. You should absolutely take advantage of it. But you go to college, you go to these programs to learn, to basically learn how to play at the next level.
Now, do you see it also more, Pat, as just more, I guess, bigger competition when you look at NIL, just due to we saw what Texas A&M was able to do with that recruiting class that just brought in with NIL. If you look at what's going on at Georgia with NIL and, USC, that's Tech Town, that's Silicon Valley and all that technology they got over there in California with NIL. So do you picture Coach Saban is trying to create that culture where, okay, in Tuscaloosa, you can win championships, most definitely. You can become a first-round pick, absolutely. But then you can also have that NIL. Also, just seeing what A&M has been doing, Texas has been doing, USC, Georgia, these other states and programs taking big advantages here of NIL. Is Saban trying to create the scenario where you can truly have it all at Alabama, even though it kind of looks like already you can have it all at Alabama?
Yeah, I think you absolutely can't have it all at Alabama right now. And, like, he absolutely is trying to create that sort of culture in this new day and age in college football, because a majority of the teams you just named are on Alabama's schedule this year and for the years to come. So why shouldn't he be trying to, like, if Texas A&M's doing something, taking full advantage of NIL, why shouldn't Alabama? They got to stay competitive on the field and off the field. So I think Nick Saban can do anything he can. And he's alluded to it in the past of how if there's no regulation, then the rich are going to get richer. And he kind of warned everybody, but he also didn't say that he wouldn't do it. So if it's within the rules, why shouldn't he be involved in this stuff like this?
I feel like, and I've said this before, Pat, everything that's been thrown at Coach Saban in terms of obstacles, because he's entering year number 16. It's crazy to think about it. Saban entering year 16 at Alabama. But with all the obstacles that the game has tried to hurl or throw at him, he's always been able to maneuver through it well, whether it's a different recruiting schedule, the early period and the traditional period, or him losing coaches each year and bouncing back with new coaches, him losing players each year, bouncing back with players, the transfer portal. He's found a way to really kind of dominate this thing now. So with NIL, how do you see Saban even maneuvering this and manipulating this to where, okay, they thought this would hurt the legacy in Alabama. I'm gonna flip it to where it helps us even more. How do you see Saban pulling that off?
Well, it's just adapt in order to survive. I mean, he can sit up there and just complain about, and like some coaches do this, that they just sit up at their press conferences and say, I want the old days of college football back. Where's the integrity? Where Nick Saban's like, well, we just got to adapt because this is just how it is. We're going to be wasting time if we're just reminiscing about the past and wanting to go back to the good old days. But this is just like kind of the new way of life. You gotta you're forced to adapt if you want to remain at the top, and that's what Alabama ultimately has its eyes set on.
Well, hopefully for the Crimson Tide, Pat, and of course the fans out there, as long as NIL does not get in the way of this program consistently winning championships, then Bama fans are cool with it. The moment the NIL becomes, okay, we're not winning championships, then people can look at that NIL and go, can we kind of do something different about this? But as long as it's yielding or it's not impeding away from championships, I think the people will be cool with that.
Yeah, I don't think it has yet, but like I said, let's see where we're at in 5 years. If there aren't any new rules and regulations put out, let's see how this looks in 5 years. Well,
we look at the high tide traditions, folks, that is being trying to help out here with the Crimson Tide, third party. It's not affiliated with the University of Alabama, but it is licensed to sell Crimson Tide gear, college football gear, getting that consent from the university. So we'll see how this goes. Name, image, likeness. It's got pros, it's got cons, but how do you feel about it as fans? How do you feel about it as consumers of Bama football?